දැන් මාස 25ක ස්ථාවර තැන්පතු සඳහා 10.75ක අසම සම පොලියක් LB යසෙසුරු.
Tonight, on First at 9 this Sunday, the 1st of February 2026. In with the new, Sipetco and Lanka IOC revise fuel prices. Reform tussle. Minister vows to defeat evil efforts undermining education reforms. Education unions slam government attempts to justify mistakes made in reform implementation. Pitchforks and stethoscopes. GMOA to intensify ongoing trade union action tomorrow. Massive protest by school development officers also planned for tomorrow. Trader revolt. Traders oppose plans to consolidate 5 economic centers under a single company.
Kalin baby so rupiyal anuwakata. Kalin baby podi hamotamai.
This is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9 on the Derana News channel. I'm Aditya Singh joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. Brought to you by the only Sri Lankan media network to rise to the pinnacle across all media platforms. Recognized as the best by every survey and beloved by the people. Now in the top story tonight, the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation revised fuel prices in line with its monthly price adjustment effective from 12 a.m. today. Under the revision, prices have been reduced only for 92-octane petrol and Lanka auto diesel, with all other fuel prices remaining unchanged.
The Ceylon Petroleum Corporation has announced a revision of fuel prices with reductions applied to selected fuel types. According to the latest price revision, the cost of a litre of octane 92 petrol has been reduced from 294 rupees to 292 rupees. Similarly, the price of a litre of auto diesel has been lowered from 279 rupees to 277 rupees. Meanwhile, prices of octane 95 petrol, super diesel and kerosene remain unchanged. Lanka IOC, a key player in the petroleum sector, has also revised its fuel prices following Sipetco price revisions, with other suppliers also expected to follow.
ඔබේ සම හඳුනාගෙන ඖෂධීය ශාකසාරමේ forever face wash එකක් භාවිතා කරන්න.
And the Government Medical Officers Association decided to intensify its ongoing continuous trade union action from tomorrow following a lack of response from relevant authorities regarding several of their key demands. The association confirmed the participation of the medical specialists. However, the Association of Medical Specialists stated that it will abstain from the trade union action.
The Government Medical Officers Association launched 5 continuous industrial actions across all government hospitals on January 26th, citing the government's failure to fulfill a list of commitments declared in writing. The decision was taken following a meeting of the GMOA Executive Committee held a few hours after the conclusion of the 2-day strike initiated on the 23rd of January. Against this backdrop, the GMOA warns further union action since the deadline granted to the Minister of Health to provide suitable solutions has expired. Accordingly, the 5 trade union actions implemented last week are scheduled to continue from tomorrow onwards. The GMOA further revealed that medical specialists will also support the strike intended to be initiated tomorrow with supportive union actions.
In all hospitals across the country, medical specialists will refrain from covering their shifts. They will not cover peripheral hospitals as well. As soon as this union action commences tomorrow morning, 164 medical specialist units will be affected, significantly impacting anesthesia and intensive care units. Specialist units treating kidney disease, gynecological ailments and mental health will also be stalled. We require solutions for our concerns. The Government Medical Officers Association will not hesitate to take further action to encourage the government. Free healthcare and its standards are under threat.
However, the Association of Medical Specialists revealed that it will not take part in the trade union action.
Among the 2,300 government medical specialists, 2,056 have personally signed a letter demanding a service constitution. One of the key objectives of the current GMOA strike is to oppose the service constitution for medical specialists. Therefore, everyone who signed the letter will not support this trade union action.
Separately, the Department of Government Information issued a statement this afternoon announcing that Director of the Ministry of Health and Mass Media, Ranga Jayawardena, has been appointed to address concerns government medical officers face when enrolling their children in schools.
Now, Minister of Health and Mass Media Dr. Nalinda Jayasinghe asserts that it is crucial to defeat evil efforts directed towards disrupting the government's progressive journey of reforming Sri Lanka's education sector. However, trade unionists note the government is attempting to justify mistakes made in the implementation of education reforms, which they claim to have caused a crisis in the country's education sector.
Another edition of the series of conferences organised by the National Movement for Education Reforms was held in Bandarakama yesterday.
There would be no need to send children for tuition classes. All content will be covered in school. I believe the tuition culture will wither away into oblivion. A certain group of individuals created unrest in society. One assertion they made was that we were going to introduce obscenity and profanity into the school syllabus. However, even though their flawed logic was exposed, they seem to not have given up. Their intention is to topple the government and impede on its progressive trajectory. A YouTube team is backing them. At a media briefing, they claim that the Grade 1 textbook is marred by errors despite the initiation of the Grade 1 school term. What is this purported mistake? They say that an image depicting a grandmother was captioned grandfather, while the grandfather's image appeared atop the grandmother's caption. Citing this observation, they call all reforms to be suspended. Didn't the textbooks we used have printing errors in them? We must never give up. We must be determined to defeat this evil.
However, political representatives and trade unionists urge the government to implement education reforms off the back of proper discourse.
The teacher's guide on the website had to be referred to trained teachers. On the other hand, several printing mistakes were observed across several modules. For instance, images of the Devatagha Mosque and the Nallur Kovil appeared swapped in the spoken English module. Same was true of images depicting a grandfather and a grandmother. The main reason for these mistakes is the haphazard implementation of reforms. The process is definitely incomplete. Had the Grade 6 reforms been implemented, the education sector would have been thrown into a worse crisis. Will they implement Grade 6 and Grade 7 reforms together next year? How well have they prepared for it? A massive crisis has been created. After throwing the education sector into turmoil, the government goes around the entire country holding media conferences, justifying its flawed decisions. This is ridiculous.
The hunger strike launched by the Sri Lanka School Development Officers Association in front of the Presidential Secretariat entered its 7th day today as protesters continue to demand immediate integration into the teaching service after serving in schools for more than 7 years. All 4 individuals who initially began the hunger strike have been hospitalized due to deteriorating health conditions. 2 additional officers joined the hunger strike yesterday, one of whom was admitted to hospital this morning following a sudden illness. Despite assurances that discussions with the president would be held at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, the protesters continued their hunger strike today, insisting that the meeting be held before tomorrow. National Freedom Front leader Vimal Veeravansa visited the protest site this morning. Subsequently, opposition leader Sajith Premadasa, former Minister Rajitha Senaratne and several other political representatives also arrived to express solidarity. Secretary of the Lanka School Development Officers Association, Viraj Manarangarada, stated that due to the authorities' failure to promptly arrange discussions, the association will be forced to proceed with a massive protest tomorrow, as previously announced. Now, meanwhile, owners of economic centre trade stalls strongly opposed government's decision to transfer the management of 5 leading economic centres from their current administrative structure to a newly incorporated company. Trade unions' outrage and opposition was directed at Minister of Trade, Commerce, Food Security and Cooperative Development Vasantha Samarasinghe during a special discussion at the Dambulla Economic Centre yesterday.
A special meeting was convened at the Dambulla Economic Centre under the patronage of Minister of Trade, Commerce, Food Security and Cooperative Development, Vasantha Samarasinghe. The meeting was set up to shed light on the government's intention to transfer administration of 5 major economic centres under the mandate of a company titled National Agri-Market Service Limited.
Neither the government nor the ministry has any intention of intervening in usual business operations. The initial contract will be signed for 5 years. After a thorough evaluation, an equitable adjustment in rent will be implemented every 3 years. Consequently, a new contract will be signed. We must modernize this industry. Farmers must be equipped with the latest facilities. Certain concerns have been raised regarding the possibility of privatizing these institutions. I assure you that will not happen. Let us move forward first. Management will not be handed over to a third party. You yourselves will be responsible for managing this operation. No, there are no two companies. We have established Agri-Market Services Limited, while a separate entity named Agri-Market Services Private Limited exists. Cabinet approval has already been granted for the inclusion of the term private. In due course, the necessary legal steps will be taken through the Cabinet to formalize the required changes. At the moment, Agri-Market Services Limited has been set up through the Economic Centre.
Protests and controversies looming over the government took centre stage in today's political discourse.
Today, many groups are outraged by the government. The teachers are dissatisfied and the development officers are also unhappy. In Trincomalee, members of the Buddhist clergy were beaten. We cannot allow the government to proceed as such. This government can only survive for a brief period. The total percentage of votes it received in the presidential election was 43%, but now it has fallen down to 20%. The government has forgotten that it was brought into power by the votes of the people. It is clear that the government takes no responsibility of the voters or of the promises it made. There is a major controversy surrounding coal. Even the government itself admits that the coal is of inferior quality. Whether the company was fined or not is irrelevant. The stock ordered was not what was delivered. This means inferior goods were brought into the country and they cannot be simply ignored. They might think that this issue can be swept under the rug. Let's see what happens. Toppling the government is an impossibility at the moment. They have 159 members of parliament. There are still 4 more years remaining in their term of office. They should be allowed to complete the full term. Otherwise, they will simply repeat what they have already said. At this moment, we are not trying to overthrow the government. That cannot be done, and we must accept that reality. At this current momentum, the government will topple itself. The opposition can only criticize since they have no other job. In fact, the opposition's only job is to criticize the government. What else can they do? The government has to proceed taking the right decisions in the interest of the country.
ආණ්ඩුවටම උදව් කරපු ආණ්ඩුවට
The same people who once helped, voted and canvassed for the government are now protesting against it.
ආණ්ඩුවට විරුද්ධව උද්ඝෝෂණ කරන්නේ.
දිලිප් ජයවීර මන්ත්‍රීතුමා යෝජනාවක් කරනවා. මයි බලවෙනදාවත් ඔක්කොම එකතු වෙලා ආණ්ඩුවට විරෝධී බල කරලා පෙළපාලිතියක් තියෙනවා.
අපි පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ පොදු විපක්ෂයක් හැටියට
We can in fact unite on May Day since we anyway work together as a common opposition in Parliament. That proposal is not a bad one.
වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ යෝජනාව නරක නැහැ.
And the government of India proposed a total of 4 billion Indian rupees in aid to Sri Lanka through the 2026 Indian budget under the Aid to Countries expenditure head. Meanwhile, Bhutan remains the largest recipient of Indian aid, with its allocations rising to about 6% of the 6% to 22.89 billion Indian rupees. India's latest annual budget places strong emphasis on boosting the manufacturing sector through structural reforms, strengthening the financial system and increasing investments in advanced technologies such as artificial intelligence. India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman said the measures aim to accelerate growth amid global economic uncertainty. The Indian government is seeking to raise manufacturing's share of GDP from 20% to 25% to create more jobs. The Indian economy is projected to grow by 7.4% this fiscal year, with inflation near 2% and the fiscal deficit estimated at 4.4% of GDP. And now here's a look at more local news across the island in brief.
4 injured fishermen among the 18 who alleged they were assaulted by the Indian Coast Guard were safely brought back and admitted to the Galle National Hospital yesterday by the Sri Lanka Navy. The 18 fishermen had set sail from the Vennapur area aboard 3 fishing vessels and later claimed they were assaulted by Indian Coast Guard. Meanwhile, 3 other fishermen were safely brought back today to the Vellamankere harbour and admitted to the Maravilla Base Hospital. Families of the affected fishermen staged a protest today at the Vellamankere harbour, condemning the incident. In other news, the Riverston Tourist Zone in the Knuckles Forest Reserve was reopened to both local and foreign visitors today, following its closure due to the damage caused by Cyclone Ditwa. The roads leading to Riverston from Rattota and Laggala, which were severely damaged, have been fully reconstructed within 2 months. Currently, only light vehicles are permitted to access the area. Public transport services have also resumed, with authorities urging visitors to drive responsibly and adhere to local guidelines. Meanwhile, a gazette notification has been issued permitting the employment of women as janitors and food service attendants during nighttime hours. The regulation, issued by Minister for Labour Dr. Anil Jayantha Fernando, was introduced through an amendment to the Shop and Office Employees Regulation of Employment and Remuneration Act. Accordingly, women over the age of 18 may now be employed as janitors and food service attendants between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. the following day.
Welcome back. Now highlighting the power of mediation in delivering true justice, former Acting Chief Justice of Sri Lanka, Her Ladyship Shirani Tilakavardhana emphasized how mediation restores equality, trust and efficiency to a legal system often burdened by delay and imbalance. She shared these comments during the ADR Lawyers Symposium 2026 held in Colombo today. Speaking at the same event, President's Counsel Dr. Kanaganagam Kanagiswaran underscored the evolving role of lawyers, calling mediation a transformative process that replaces confrontation with empathy and legally sound settlements.
Technology will assist justice, but it must never replace human judgment. The principle is especially vital in mediation. Mediation is not an exercise in probability. It is an exercise in human understanding. It pivots on perceptions of fear, dignity, remorse and hope. Realities that no database can fully capture. No algorithm can replace empathy. No model can substitute moral judgment. The future therefore lies not in automation but in ethical integration. AI as support, not sovereign. Transparency by design. Clear accountability for error and bias. Firm preservation of human agency, discretion and dignity. Justice must remain intelligible, contestable and humane. This evolving landscape places new demands on the legal profession. Each and every one of you is personally and collectively going to take this forward. The modern lawyer must be more than a technician of rules. They must be a steward of resolution. They must understand technology without surrendering judgment, embrace innovation without abandoning ethics, and know when adversarial tools serve justice and when they merely deepen harm. For young women and men, practitioners like you especially, the challenge is clear. The law will change, technology will accelerate, but ethics and integrity must remain constant. The ethical duty of a lawyer is not merely to win, but to reduce unnecessary harm, guide clients wisely, and protect the credibility of the justice system itself. Justice has never been static. It endures precisely because it evolves. Mediation and technology. I think mediation improves adjudication and efficiency. There is no question. And I think strategic sequence is important in it because early and late stage mediation can sometimes prevent escalation of violence in courts. Late mediation after evidence can sometimes actually clear understanding between parties and increase the prospects of settlements and hybrid models. There is trust, efficiency and certainty, and I think parties experience both adjudicative authority because though it's not your honor, I have sat on benches and watched the poor, the sick coming to courts in a wheelchair. I have watched amazing, quiet women lawyers trying to make it themselves, and I have always been confused that the good norm of justice is what? Equality. Is equality there in the courts? I have never experienced. I have worked towards bringing equality, substantive equality, where people recognize the unequal power balance. And to me, when I discovered mediation, I came to my nest, my home, because there is true equality.
In that background, I wish to flag two distinct matters which are never flagged. That is, a lawyer as a mediator. Rajiv told this morning, I'm happy to know that there have been some 22 odd young lawyers who have recruited themselves in the study of mediation, become accredited members. That is, so there are two roles to the lawyers. First role, a lawyer as a mediator. That requires something that we'll discuss throughout the whole session. It requires of them a complete metamorphosis. Must break out of your old shackles, remove your black coat, your trousers, but you wear an entirely new dress because it changes your mindset, it changes the approach to dispute resolution. That is one role. The other role is role of a lawyer in mediation. That is before the mediation, during the mediation, after the mediation. Because I draw that example from my early days of negotiation. Before you mediate or negotiate or arbitrate, lawyers have a role in advising. Like if you throw your mind back to pre-trial proceedings before, you have to collect your evidence, you must know what is it, you must identify the legal issues. All that are necessary for a mediator too. Only the process he involves in is very different. And the mindset is empathy, a lot of empathy is required. And he doesn't judge. He just brings the parties together and let them express themselves, which is not so. So, in parties expressing themselves, they need to understand what their case is. So, your role as a lawyer in mediation is very different to your role.
Now in your business news, Sri Lanka's imports exceeded 2 billion, Sri Lanka's vehicle imports exceeded $2 billion in 2025, according to external sector performance data from December 2025 released by the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. Vehicle imports, including personal and commercial vehicles, amounted to $301 million in December 2025, bringing the total vehicle import bill for the year to $2.047 billion. Personal vehicle imports alone accounted for $1.6 billion in 2025. Now, in your international business news, the United States President Donald Trump claims India will now buy Venezuelan oil after tussles last year over the South Asian country's significant imports of Russian crude. Trump told reporters on board Air Force One yesterday that the concept of the deal has already been made. India has not been importing significant amounts of Iranian oil owing to US sanctions that have squeezed exports but turned to Russia for supplies after Western penalties over the Ukraine war drove down the cost of crude. Trump, who has said his country intends to control Venezuela's oil sales and revenues indefinitely after abducting former leader Nicolas Maduro last month, had put pressure on India to stop buying Russian oil. The US government this week lifted some sanctions on Venezuela's oil industry to make it easier for US companies to sell its crude oil. Trump also said China could make a deal with the US to buy Venezuelan oil. Welcome back. Now in your world news, at least 32 people were killed in a wave of Israeli airstrikes across the Gaza Strip yesterday. The Civil Defense Agency, which is operated by Hamas, says children and women were among those killed. It added that in one attack, helicopter gunships hit a tent sheltering displaced people in the southern city of Khan Yunis. Palestinians have described these strikes as the heaviest since the second phase of the ceasefire, brokered by US President Trump last October, came into effect earlier this month. The Israeli military confirmed that a number of strikes were carried out in response to what it said was a Hamas violation of the agreement on Friday. Both the Israeli Defense Forces and Hamas have accused each other of violating the truce since it came into effect last year. Now, halfway across the world, Pakistan's security forces have killed at least 145 militants in Balochistan over a 40-hour period following a wave of coordinated attacks across the province. Balochistan Chief Minister Sarfraz Bugti said the deaths include militants killed in raids on Friday and yesterday, as well as during ongoing clearance operations. Earlier, the military had reported 92 militant deaths. 17 law enforcement personnel and 31 civilians were also killed in the violence, one of the deadliest flare-ups in this year. The band Baloch Liberation claimed responsibility, saying it launched a coordinated operation targeting security forces across multiple districts, including Quetta and Gouda. Pakistan's military blamed Indian-sponsored militants, a claim New Delhi strongly denied, accusing Islamabad of deflecting attention from internal issues. That's all for tonight from First at 9. For the latest developments around the clock, stay in touch with Ada Derana, the Sri Lankan news brand of international excellence. Thank you for joining. Have a great night.
From across the nation and around the world, this is Sri Lanka's #1 news source, Ada Derana.